family fortunes, contested wills, courtroom drama. We tend to think these stories belong in fiction. But in 1951, a real-life case worth $10 million in today's money showed how the most important decisions happen long before anyone says, "All rise."
You know what fascinates me about this particular case? It started in the Maryland Orphans Court, which, despite its name, was actually designed to protect anyone who couldn't protect themselves.
That's right. And at the center of it all was Betsy Lyon, or Mrs. Kelly, as she became known. The newspapers couldn't get enough of her story, especially after her first husband's tragic suicide just 4 years earlier.
The media coverage was intense. There's this striking photograph of her from the time, looking directly at the camera, perfectly composed in a tailored jacket. Every detail carefully chosen to project respectability.
But here's what makes this story so compelling. All that carefully crafted public image. It meant absolutely nothing once they got into the actual courtroom. This was about cold, hard numbers. A $700,000 estate, 5 luxury automobiles worth $5,000 each, and a 119-acre property.
Not to mention the collection of jewelry worth, well, they never actually disclosed that value, did they?
No, they didn't. And here's where it gets interesting. Betsy's mother, Irene Moore Lyon, had restructured the trust so that Betsy would only receive the interest income. The principal, the real wealth, was meant for Betsy's son, Freddie, and it was only to be received after Betsy's death.
That must have been a difficult pill to swallow. Living off interest versus having control of the principal, that's the difference between maintaining wealth and actually wielding it.
Exactly. And initially, Betsy and her father, Dr. Lyon, tried to fight this separately. They both claimed Irene wasn't of sound and disposing mind when she rewrote the will. But they weren't getting anywhere until they made a crucial strategic move.
The venue changed from Montgomery County to Prince George's County, right? That seemed like such a small detail at first.
Oh, but it was everything. Prince George's County had a completely different court culture, more institutional, more focused on documents than local connections. It was like playing chess, but suddenly all the rules had changed in their favor.
You know what I find fascinating? The relationship between Betsy and her father. I mean, this was a woman who had him arrested for assault and battery at one point. Yet here they were, working together.
Right? He spent a night in jail before she withdrew the charges. But desperation makes strange bedfellows, and they had millions of reasons to cooperate.
Well, speaking of strange behavior, let's talk about that fireplace incident. Can you imagine demanding a fire be built when it's 96 degrees outside?
That testimony was crucial. Irene had ordered the fire built, then almost immediately demanded it be put out because it was too hot. But here's what really sealed the deal: the medical testimony about her cerebral hemorrhages.
The doctors testified that the hemorrhages had left her entire left side paralyzed and impaired her mind. That must have been compelling evidence for the jury.
So compelling that it took them just 53 minutes to reach their verdict. Think about that. Less than an hour to decide the fate of what would be $10 million today.
That's remarkably quick for such a complex case. But I'm curious about something. What happened to all those carefully crafted media narratives once they got into the courtroom?
They essentially evaporated. Prince George's County's court system was designed to be immune to public pressure. Headlines didn't sway judges, and even the most appealing photographs couldn't alter trust language.
So in the end, it came down to the cold, hard facts: medical testimony, documented behavior, and legal precedent.
Exactly. And while Betsy and her father won their case, you have to wonder about the cost. Not the financial cost, the human cost. This wasn't just about money, it was about family relationships that were fundamentally altered.
That's a really good point. Even though they got control of the estate, something was irreparably damaged in the process.
And here's what I find most fascinating. The echoes of this case continued long after the verdict. There were more disputes, more filings, more legal battles to come. It's like dropping a stone in a pond. The ripples just keep going.
You know what this reminds me of? How sometimes the most important decisions in our lives aren't made in moments of high drama, but in quiet rooms where people sign papers and make choices that will echo through generations.
That's exactly right. And while we know how the legal battle ended, the human story, the real story, continued long after the headlines faded, and the courthouse doors closed.
So what happened next? There must be more to this story.
Oh, there is. But that's a tale for another time. What we can say is that this case changed everything, not just for this family, but for how we think about trust law and family wealth.
Well, it certainly shows how complex family dynamics can become when millions of dollars are at stake.